right, welcome everyone to Donovan and Dino on this Tuesday night. We are presented as always by Master Pizza. Remember, download the Master Pizza app and earn pizza points today from Master Pizza. Taste above all. I'm Dave DeNatale with Jim Donovan, and so much to get into tonight here. I have like a bunch of things on the menu in this little pre-Thanksgiving show. First and foremost, while you were on the front row, the Ohio State Buckeyes back now to number one in the college football playoff rankings, heading into Saturday's showdown in Ann Arbor against the Wolverines.
Good news. These rankings, I think, I don't want to water them down, but they really don't mean anything until the next one, right?
That's right.
The next one's the big one. Or, no, the two more, right?
Yeah, there's two more. You got
next week, and then the one after the conference championship weekend is really the one that matters. But good for them.
Yeah.
I mean, the quality of opponent, they beat Penn State. LSU had one of those easy rollover games that these SEC teams like Alabama, Auburn play cupcake games just before they
before
play
the rivalry
each other.
game.
Yeah, well, good. That's great.
I got to tell you, I'm a Heisman voter, just full disclosure. Chase Young is making, I know he had to miss 2 games, but Chase Young really is making a case. And as we know in history, there aren't many defensive players. Actually, there's only one defensive player who's won the Heisman. He's making a heck of a case.
Yeah, he really is. I mean, he is a force. And you're right, the blemish will be the 2 games. Yeah. And I think that's a big blemish,
yes.
I think, in the eyes of voters. But, come the spring, could he not be right up at the top of the NFL draft? I mean, I know a quarterback or a team that is picking number one probably needs a quarterback, and you have to go get one, and you position yourselves like a team like the one that was in here over the weekend. I mean, maybe the Miami Dolphins say, Josh Rosen is not our guy,
right, and
we're going to need a quarterback, and if they're at the top where the Bengals are right there, winless right now in the season, they're at the top, and they have to go for a quarterback. But you could be sitting right there behind that. You could end up with a tremendous player. Or would somebody make the move, and say, hey, listen, we have a quarterback.
Right.
We're okay with who we have. Even though we're picking first, we're going to go for, Chase Young. I mean, he's the guy. He's the best defensive player. Might be the best player in college football.
Yeah, it may come down to a current Buckeye and a former Buckeye, with Joe Burrow and LSU. It's what he's done. It's been fun to watch him because, obviously with Haskins and everything, he saw the writing on the wall. There just wasn't going to be an opportunity for him to play. So I think he made the wise decision and said, okay, where can I go where I can play? And LSU, I always think of LSU as a running team and everything, and they tailored the offense around him, and it's really been quite successful.
Well, it's something they had to do, and I think that, that's really some of the reasons why, they have had to make changes in their offense because they have all of this incredible, off the chart, athletic ability. I mean, they have first-round picks every year. Defensive cornerbacks. Right. Our guy Greedy Williams. I mean, they have other guys that are just tremendous players. Defensive linemen. Wide receivers that are really terrific players. But the quarterback position has probably, I would say, not matched the rest of their talent on the team. The amazing thing about what's going on right now is that Urban Meyer sits on that Fox pregame show now for the college football, the Big Ten, big noon game coming up, and of course it's the Ohio State-Michigan game. But I really like the show. It's a great show, and he's tremendous on it. Mm-hmm. But he sits there, and I mean, he's the Buckeye team that's there right now. I mean, he put that team together.
Yes.
He recruited Joe Burrow,
yes,
right? I mean, it's amazing how much control and influence he still has over the real big part of college football right now. And you wonder, is there another chapter in his coaching career? Is he going to sit there this year? Do you see him sitting there for 2 more years? Do you see him being just a television guy, an analyst on a pregame show?
I've known him, and I was always amazed that he, the first time he got out of coaching, it's like, this isn't going to last long and everything. If he gets the health thing satisfied, I can't see him staying on the sidelines. He's too much of a competitor. He's too much of a guy that loves the loves the battle, loves the preparation, loves the game. And, you know, it was interesting. I mean, there are odds makers who have him right now as the top guy to be the next head coach of the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, he made a comment, didn't he say, well, heck, those are the Dallas Cowboys, when people had drawn a parallel to him in that job. But it just seems as though in his career, if you go back when he had that, you know, health scare after the SEC championship game that year, when his Florida team lost to Alabama, and he really ended up like in the hospital after the game. And then he stepped away for a little bit, and then he got right back into it. And it looked like he was going to step away for good, take a long leave of absence. And then, of course, he stepped away from Florida, but only for the 1 year. And then he took the Ohio State job. And I think it seems as though, and I know he's got a family situation, and his family has been, you know, they've drawn up a contract for him to make sure that he lives his life healthy the right way, and that coaching doesn't burn him up because he only knows one way to go at it. But it always seems as though he just recharges his battery and then gets back into it. And I'm wondering, I mean, all he would have to do is pick up the phone and contact anybody. And the NFL would be an interesting situation, which with the Lamar Jackson thing working so well right now in the NFL, and unfortunately for the Browns, it is really working well, even though the Browns corralled him back in the early part of the season. But with that working so well, Patrick Mahomes working well, coming out of Texas Tech, Baker Mayfield,
I was going to say,
to some extent,
Baker,
really working well. The influence of that offense and the spread and the air raid offense coming into the NFL, now it makes more sense for a guy like Urban Meyer or, you know, Lincoln Riley to leave Oklahoma and come into the NFL, because the NFL is more open now to running that kind of an offense and getting that kind of a player.
Now, I mean, I'm sure Bill Belichick would tell him, hey, look, it's still a grind, but you don't have to, you're not spending the day after you win a national championship, you know, the night of, on the phone trying to get three recruits to come and play for you. I mean, it's a little bit different to be an NFL coach. You have much more of a, you know, you're not competing so much with everybody else to get the talent. I mean, basically, it's drafting, it's free agency and everything. You're not going up against every school for every player. It's different.
I mean, that's a war.
Yes.
I mean, if you remember, even early in the season when things weren't going well for Michigan, and people were saying, well, I think Michigan's getting tired of Jim Harbaugh. I think Jim Harbaugh is taking a look at the Michigan situation and saying, I don't think I can get them to where they want to go. And I mean, he's making like $9 million a year. But then there was a story that came out that said, you know, he might be interested in coming to the NFL. And that kills a guy's recruiting. I mean, that's the war of recruiting. I can remember Brian Kelly, after Notre Dame got trounced in the national championship game against Alabama. Brian Kelly took an interview with the Philadelphia Eagles. You know, and he said it was just kind of an exploratory thing. He wanted to get the NFL experience of going through the interview process. And I do believe, you know, he lost a couple of recruits when that story came out, because kids were saying, wait a minute, you know, I'm going to go to Notre Dame and you may not be there. And that's what you face in the recruiting thing. So you go to a guy like John Belot right now, the Cavs head coach. Does he miss the college game? I think parts of it he does. Okay, I think he misses the kids. I think, and you know, now he's coaching kids, but they're millionaires. Okay, I think he misses the kids, and I think he really misses the teaching time and the practice time that you don't get in the NBA, because you're playing back-to-backs 3 or 4 games a week. But you know, the thing he doesn't miss is the recruiting. I think. So I think, you know, it's not only football. It's the other major sports.
It's the recruiting. It's the recruiting war. Just with Jim Harbaugh, one point. How close, in your mind, was he, in all these times the Browns have been hiring coaches and firing coaches and everything? There was a point before, I don't know, it was before Hugh Jackson, or maybe it was Mike Pettin. Was there a time that he almost became the Browns coach?
The San Francisco 49ers and Browns actually entered into talks. And it was at a point where Harbaugh and the ownership of the 49ers were not clicking. I think it was post-Super Bowl. And they were not clicking. And so it looked like there was an end in sight, and eventually there was. And so I think they were looking for a soft landing. And the soft landing was, well, he could go to another team in the NFL. And, of course, the Browns every year were looking for a coach. And, there were definite conversations. I believe there were trade talks, because there was going to be compensation to allow Harbaugh to leave San Francisco and come to Cleveland. I think the thing that might have hung it up was a contract.
Wow.
Was the price. I believe that's what it was. But yeah, there were real talks about that.
A la John, like what John Gruden did going from the Raiders to the Buccaneers.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Al Davis and the Glazers ended up making a trade. All right, staying to the NFL. It's a good segue into the NFL. The list of semifinalists for the Pro Football Hall of Fame's class of 2020 out today. Among those on the list, once again, and this is now, three times in 4 years, Clay Matthews, the legendary Browns linebacker. I don't know, Jimmy. I'm looking at the list of semifinalists, and I think Troy Polamalu is the only guy that, like, of the first years that's like, I think he's definite. Like, you just sit there and you go, Polamalu, Hall of Famer. I think Matthews might have a shot to maybe get into the final round. I don't know. I mean, there's been some groundswell for it in the last 12 months.
Yeah, but in the last 3 months, there hasn't been. I mean, you're right. Mm-hmm. There was a groundswell to it, and the Browns were a big part of that and felt a responsibility that maybe in the past they hadn't done enough. And I agree, if they felt that way, that they hadn't done enough. I mean, it was Clay's daughter that was really pushing it. And to be honest with you, Tony Grossi. Tony Grossi is really in that room pushing for Clay Matthews to get in. And I think when the Browns put him in the Ring of Honor,
and that's Sunday night.
Even though he wasn't a Hall of Famer, because that is usually the criteria for to go into the Ring of Honor, I thought it was hot at that point in time. But it seems to have quieted down. And I don't think Clay pushes himself a great deal. I mean, I don't think he openly campaigns for himself. Even the night that he gave his speech, it was all about the team, his teammates. It was all about the fans and what the fans meant to him and how he loved coming to Cleveland and everything like that. He didn't talk about himself a great deal. He talked about the experience of the Cleveland Browns. And, you know, this seems that you really have to keep the torch on it.
Yes.
You know, to keep the flame going, I think.
I mean, his former team, like Ernest Biner, I love EB, by the way. Every other tweet is basically Biner saying, hey, don't forget about me for the Hall of Fame. Don't forget about me. Unfortunately for Ernest, he didn't get into the semifinal round. But that's hard. If you're a humble guy, that's a hard thing sometimes to talk. And I know I would also think for Clay, in his mind, he'd also be saying, I don't want to take anything away from what my son is doing, and, you know, I don't want to overshadow him. But
but his son would really like to see him in the Hall of Fame. I mean, he really would. Clay Jr. told a great story in the week leading up to Clay's induction and you know, application into the Ring of Honor. And remember, the Browns were playing the Rams, where Clay plays right now. And he said growing up as a kid, he knew his dad was a football player. He knew his dad played a lot, played a long time, was a good player, but he didn't realize how great a player he was until he started when he grew up a little bit more. In fact, it might have been when he was in college or definitely in his early years in Green Bay in the NFL that he started watching YouTube clips and highlights of his dad, and he went, wow, my dad really was a great player. And that's pretty amazing.
You know, it was...
And that shows you that Clay doesn't push himself.
He doesn't, but you know, there was that time, you know, from like I don't think they started counting sacks as a statistic until the mid-'80s. I believe it's like 85, 86, maybe it was the year before. But there was like the first 4 or 5 years of Clay's career, sacks were not a statistic. So I think that hurt him a little bit. And, you know, the Browns, you know, he played on the Cardiac Kids teams. The Browns were always a collection of stars, not necessarily, you never had a superstar. You know, you had Dixon and Minifield, or you had the Cardiac Kids and Brian Sipe, and you had Bernie Kosar. But Clay was he was just so consistently good year in, year out, year in and year out on that Browns defense.
He was. He could play inside, he could play outside, he could play anywhere you wanted him to play. Joe Schobert plays a little bit like him.
Yes.
He really does. Joe Schobert could play inside, he could play outside. He's always around the football. Clay was always around the football. His longevity is his ace to put on the table when you have a discussion about him. I mean, 17 years.
Yes.
I mean, all of those games. I mean, his last play in the NFL was a sack. I mean, it's unbelievable what he was able to do. The missing card in his deck is a Super Bowl. He never was on a Super Bowl team. He was so close with the Browns, and it just didn't happen. That would be a shame if that's the only thing that holds him back. That would hold back a lot of great players in the NFL.
Right. At some point, though, if he doesn't get in via the vote, I still think in the when he goes from that eligibility to the Veterans Committee, I do believe at some point he gets in that way.
Well, I hope so.
I do believe.
That would be a great moment. I mean, his brother is in, you know, and maybe his son would go in.
And his son would go in, right.
I would think that Clay Jr. is probably on the back nine of his career.
Yeah, I would think so. I would think so. Okay.
What if they went in together?
How awesome would that be? Clay as the senior as from the Veterans Committee, junior goes in, or the third goes in by a vote. That would be cool. That would be worth waiting for.
Well, as we've said on this show many times, I am an idea guy.
Yes.
Not much on the follow through of the idea. I love to throw them out there, and that would be a beauty.
All right. Finally, I have to. I knew you won't like that I'm doing this, but I'm going to give you props, my friend, because you deserve it. Every year, the National Sports Media Association has the outstanding sportscaster and sports writer for each state nominated, and my partner has. You've won it a couple of times, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe, yeah. I think I won it in Vermont, actually.
Did you really?
Yeah, I think so.
Did you really? But for the 2019-2020 year, Jim Donovan is a finalist for the Ohio Sportscaster of the Year. You'll be going up against Dan Horde down in Cincinnati and Mr. Duffy down in Cincinnati too, right? Was that
Jim Day?
Jim Day, that's right. Winners will be contacted. You'll be contacted, hopefully, first week of January.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you.
So good luck, my friend.
Thank you.
It's well deserved.
Thank you.
You're like, okay, drop it. Right. All right, drop it right now.
Let's get Clay Matthews in the Hall of Fame.
All right, we'll have more time here to get ready for the Browns and Steelers. Talk about rivalry. We spent most of the time with Ohio State and Michigan. We'll have a lot of time tomorrow to talk Browns and Steelers, and you will have also Dog Pound Radio tomorrow. I always want to give a plug. 7 o'clock on Sirius tomorrow night.
Right, tomorrow night. Yeah, it'd be great. Night before Thanksgiving. Boy, I tell you what, this is the fun time around these parts. The Browns and Steelers, Ohio State, Michigan, the great high school games that are going on, the Final Four in every division this weekend. Hard to live up to what happened last weekend.
I've called high school games for 21 years now, I think, in Ohio, and I've called state championships, and that's always there's a certain amount of excitement and everything. But that was probably the most exciting game I've ever called was St. Ed and Menor. Just in overtime, back and forth, and it was like, okay.
What made them go for two?
Steve Trevisano told me actually.
Was that his plan?
That was his plan. He actually said had they scored in regulation with probably about a minute and a half or less to go in the game, he was going to go for two then. But they scored with about 3 minutes to go in the fourth quarter to tie it. So that was why they kicked the extra point and risked overtime then. But then the defense gets a stop. You go into overtime. They drew, they won the toss, so they were the second team to go. And so he said, hey, look, we're not going to double overtime. I've got my offense. I trust them. If we can't score on, from 2.5 yards out, we don't deserve to move on.
Right. Now, there have been some famous Menor playoff games that have been just legendary, instant classics.
Yeah.
And they had one against St. Ignatius.
Yes.
That was also at Byers Field,
yes.
I think. Okay. Now that went multiple overtimes.
That one, I think, 6 overtimes. That was Mitch Trubisky.
Is it unlike the college rule where at some point you have to go for two in high school? I was wondering that.
I think it's after 4. I think it's after like.
Okay. Well, I remember Ignatius did not get the 2.
Correct.
Yeah. Right.
And that was amazing.
I have to tell you, Dino, I remember watching that particular game, and saying I hate to see either team lose.
Yes.
Did you feel that way the other night?
I did, because it was St. Ed's were the defending champs, and they really were worthy defending champs, but. You hate to see Menor lose because, that would have been it for Steve Trevisano. And, the kids are just playing so hard for him. And, I mean, they all said to me after the game, as I was talking to a couple of them, they're like, hey, we get to practice on Thanksgiving. This is awesome. This is great. We get to, another week with my brothers. And you hate to see that end.
Do you know, there was a tradition at St. Ignatius when they were in their state championship run, okay, which lasted like over a decade, okay, and that was a big thrill for them. And it became such a tradition that they would be practicing on Thanksgiving morning.
Yep.
And what would happen, all the former great Ignatius players would come back and be at that practice on Thursday morning. And you'd have Joe Pickens, you'd have Scott Mutrin, you'd have those great Ignatius quarterbacks, maybe Brian Hoyer, would come back. And they would be at the practice for the current team that was going into, a state championship game or a semifinal game, and it became like, you book it. It was like the Macy's Parade. St. Ignatius is practicing on Thursday, and it would be a who's who of Wildcat football down there.
And that tradition, I know Mentor's doing it because I talked to a Mentor alumni after the game, and he said, "Oh yeah," he goes, "We've done it before. Triv always invites us back." So
that's great.
That's great. You share in those moments, and that's going to be fun. Again, Mentor's got Pickerington Central. That'll be down at Glen Oak. Aurora has Mansfield. That's over at Nordonia. And then Kirtland plays on Saturday. But we have Avon and Massillon Friday on WKYC.com back at Byers Field. That's like my new home away from home. By the way,
did you go to Fast Eddie's?
I did go to Fast Eddie's. Yeah. Amazing place.
It is, isn't it?
Amazing place.
Fast Eddie's, right outside Byers Field, around the corner from Byers Field. Really great place. Eddie Serino does an amazing job there. I'm glad you went.
I did.
Yeah,
I did. Matt Florjancic and I met up there after the game.
Incidentally, great Sunday brunch.
That's what they told me. They told me that you and the Donovan family have been known to frequent down there on Sundays.
I mean, I have been late to the last 4 Browns home games. No, I haven't.
No,
because it's a bye-week staple.
Absolutely.
It's a bye-week staple. Or like when they played the Thursday night game.
Right.
You
You're like,
go after that.
Sunday brunch.
Yeah.
All right. We'll have more on Donovan and Dino tomorrow. We'll get you ready for the Browns and Steelers coming up on Sunday after Thanksgiving. Okay. Again, congrats to my partner, the nominee for the Ohio Sportscaster of the Year, and thanks to everybody for watching. This has been Donovan and Dino, presented by Master Pizza, right here on 3 News, Facebook Live, and on YouTube.
All right. So you went, huh?
I did.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, that was a good place.